Hi guys, today we are going to be making a super simple fresh baked loaf of bread. It only has 4 ingredients, it's super easy, and it really makes a nice impact when you're taking it to gatherings. I like to make it with soup, I like to make it with dips, and it's really easy. So what we're gonna start with is 3 cups of flour. All right, and what I'm using for my flour is bread flour. So you can use all-purpose bleach flour for this recipe. It's gonna be totally okay if you do. But the nice thing about using good flour, like bread flour and everything, I'm using King Arthur's, just regular bread flour. It's not bleached. It has more protein in it, and when it has more protein in it, that means more gluten. When you have more gluten, it's going to give you a nice chewy kind of doughy bread that you get more from like a bakery. It's also gonna give you nice bubbles in your bread, almost like a sourdough, but it's not the sourdough, but it's got the same kind of feel of that. So if you use a bread flour with more protein and everything in it, it's gonna give you a nice consistency bread. You know, it's like I said, the all-purpose flour is totally okay. It's not gonna make the quality of the bread taste any less better. It's just gives you a nice little edge if you use something that way. So that's why I kind of like to up my game a little bit with my flour. I didn't always used to. I've just recently, kind of in the past few years, kind of started caring a little bit more about that. I always just used all-purpose white flour, and it's totally okay too. But if you want to have it really nice artisan, nice bubbly bread like that, you're going to want to use some bread flour. All right, next up I'm just putting 1/2 teaspoon of yeast. I'm gonna just dump it right in. You can get any kind of active dry yeast. I just have a normal little jar that I got from the grocery store. And anytime you're using yeast like this, you obviously want to keep it in the refrigerator when it's not being used because it is active, and you want to keep it on a nice chill so it doesn't spoil or go bad quickly. All right, and then next we're gonna do just 1 teaspoon of salt. That is going to give your bread a little bit of flavor so it's not completely bland. All right, and then after your teaspoon of salt, you're gonna wanna put 1.5 cups of warm water. I always just on my sink put it to my hottest setting. Some bread recipes and everything, it really matters what temperature you're using, exact measurements. This is really easy. Everything I like to do in my kitchen that I share with you guys is a nice, easy rendition of something that you're not really gonna mess up, but it looks beautiful, it tastes great, and it really gives you a nice result for what you're looking for, but in an easy way. So we're gonna do 1.5 cups of warm water. I'm using my dry measurement, you can use wet, really doesn't matter, but just make sure it's level. We're gonna pour this in here. Okay, and then we're gonna pour in our other 1/2 cup of water. The reason you obviously need warm water is because you need to activate your yeast. Your yeast will not activate. Yeast likes warm things. It likes warm places, warm water. That's it, 4 ingredients, how easy. It's just water, salt, flour, and yeast. We're gonna stir all of this up together into just kind of like a rough dough. It's exactly what you want it to be, is just a nice rough dough ball. It doesn't have to be, it's not gonna come together fully. All right, and then when it just starts coming together, you can use the last little portion of mixing with your hands. You're just gonna wanna kind of get in there and knead the rest of the dough, getting all of the last bits of the dry edges, and then it's just gonna be a nice little rough ball of dough. Now I'm gonna take it out just to show you. It's supposed to kind of look like this. And then what you're gonna do then is leave that in this bowl. Now, the beauty of this is you literally just mix those 4 ingredients together and you put it overnight with like a nice plastic wrap over top or a dish towel or something, and that's gonna give it time to rise. You only wanna let it 8 hours to 24 hours. If it goes past 24 hours, it's gonna start to kind of get to the point where it's unusable. But I like to do these anytime before I go to bed. I just start this, let it sit overnight, and then any time in the day, it's very forgiving. If you don't get to it at exactly 8 hours, it can continue to sit. You can get home and put it in the oven for dinner, so that's really awesome. It's a very easy bread. It's not something like sourdough that's a little more finicky and stuff. All right, so I'm gonna put this aside, and then I'm going to show you. I've got one right here that I, ta-da, did last night. I put this on the stove top. If I do anything cooking wise or baking wise, I will always let my dough kind of sit by it because like I said before, dough likes warm places. You don't want it piping hot. You know, you're not gonna want to put it like in the oven or anything, but just somewhere that's kind of a nice warm space you want to leave it. So this has doubled in size. This is what it's going to look like. This was this size to this size. That's what you want it to look like. All right, so all you're gonna do is just scrape this dough out with your hands. You can use a spatula, whatever. I like to work with my hands. That's the way I am. So I like to scrape all that out, and then you're gonna wanna get some flour because this is very sticky. If it's very sticky and sticking to your fingers, that's a good thing. That's how it's supposed to be. So, and I also didn't have any plastic wrap, so I just used a dish towel. There's a little bit of crunchies in here on the top from that. That is totally okay. If that gets in your dough, don't even worry about it. You are not going to be able to tell that that took place after it's done baking. You won't even detect it. So it does take a good amount of flour. You're just gonna wanna keep pulling this from this side and kneading it to the middle. You don't have to do this crazy long or anything. It's just to kind of help get it to form into a ball. All right, and then once you've got it kind of nice and kneaded and smooth into a little ball there, you're gonna just grip these seams together right in the middle and make sure you got a little flour there and roll it over. And then you wanna just kind of gently turn it and tuck these edges in to get it to form into a nice little ball. There's something just so satisfying about working with dough in your hands and smelling the bread while it bakes and pulling it out and serving it. I love fresh baked bread so much. All right, so what you wanna do with this little guy is you're gonna give it 30 minutes to rest and kind of let everything reset and let that gluten keep activating. And then whenever it has 30 minutes to rest, you are going to get a piece of parchment paper and put it on top. I'm gonna let this rest for a second. And then you'll take this dough that technically rested for 30 minutes, but I'm just gonna use it today because it's not gonna hurt real bad, but. All right, you're gonna put it on a piece of parchment. You're gonna transfer it right there. And then what you wanna do next is you're gonna slash a little X on the top of your dough. The reason you're doing that is because you want to allow the natural gases and everything that are going to start activating in here be able to have a place of escape. I've got a little blade. Just be careful. You don't have to have a razor blade. I just happen to have one because I like to bake bread a lot. If you have a real sharp knife, you can just do it across the edge here. So I'm gonna just cut a seam just right at the top of the edge. You don't have to go crazy deep with it, but I love it because it just, when you pull this out of the oven, it looks so beautiful. It's like a golden brown and it's crispy and delicious, and it really looks gorgeous and looks like you could have bought it from a professional bakery. All right, so while we were doing this, I preheated my oven to 450 degrees. This recipe requires a Dutch oven or a crock of some sort that you're gonna preheat at 450 with your oven. You want your pot to be nice and hot that you're putting this dough into. So be very careful when you're getting it out. All right, and I've got a nice cast iron pot here, a little Dutch oven. And then, whoo, see, it's hot. That's exactly how you want it to be. Now, a baking tip that I like to do for bread is, and you don't have to do this, but it kind of keeps the bottom of your bread from getting really dark and crispy. I like to take just some cornmeal, and you're gonna sprinkle it on the bottom of your pan to coat it, because that will be a barrier for your bread, that will start to brown the cornmeal and not the bottom of your bread. And it's just, you can discard it when you're done, but it's nice because you don't get a really, really thick brown crust on the bottom, so it's still kind of chewy and light. All right, and then whenever you coat that completely with cornmeal, you're just going to take your parchment paper with your little dough baby and tuck it right in here. All right, then obviously because you've got extras here, we're just gonna trim these off so you can get your lid on. Doesn't have to be perfect or fancy, just wanna get that off. All right, and then what you're going to do is bake this for 30 minutes, and you want the lid on because that's gonna create steam. Steam is what's going to be making this bake at a nice even temperature, and that's what the bread needs to bake. If you do not have a Dutch oven on hand, have no fear, you can just use a normal pot. If you want to cover the top with tin foil, you can do that. Or if you don't have that, put a pan of water in your oven, and you can even do this on a tray. It's just all about the steam. So if there's no moisture that can get locked in this pot, you do need water present in the stove for that to happen. So that's also an option. Doesn't have to be crazy fancy. All right, so I'm going to put this in here. We're going to set this for 30 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes of the baking, you take the lid off so you can get a nice crusty brown top on it. We're going to set this here, and then up next, we're going to get some easy jam going. All right, so what I'm doing now is I am just cutting in half some black seedless table grapes. My kids prefer the grape jelly out of anything that I make. You can use any fruit you want, honestly. You can do strawberry, you could do raspberry, you could do blackberry, you could do anything that you prefer. I've done mixed berry before too, but my kids love the grape jam that I make. And I love this recipe because it's so easy. It is only 3 ingredients. It's the fruit, and it's the sugar, and it's fresh lemon juice. It doesn't have any pectin either, so it's just something you can throw together really quick, and it lasts in your fridge for about 3 weeks to stay fresh. You can keep it in the freezer if you like for up to 6 months. When you're putting it in the jar though for the freezer, just leave a little bit of room so it can expand. All right, so actually, okay, we need 1 fresh lemon. So this is gonna equal to about 5 cups, roughly about what I chopped for these grapes. Then you're gonna do 1 fresh lemon. It should equal out to about 2 tablespoons. So I'm just gonna juice this. All right, so once you have that juiced, you're just going to take a nice big 6 to 8 quart simmer pot, and you're going to dump the contents of your grapes in here, the contents of your bowl. All right, all those are in, and then you're gonna pour your fresh squeezed lemon juice right over top. Then you want half a cup of white granulated sugar. All right, and then once you've got your sugar in there, you're just gonna put your lid on, and we're gonna put this on high heat on the cooktop until it starts to kind of simmer and boil. Once it gets to a boiling stage, you wanna put it down on low and let it simmer for 20 to 25 minutes. And then you can kind of check it out, and I like to use like a potato masher or something to kind of like mash it down and make everything blend together. So I'm gonna put this over here. We're gonna get this boiling at a high heat. You can also use a whisk too. All right, so now I've got my jelly cooking on the stove top. I just took the lid of my bread off in my pan, or my pot, sorry. And that is gonna give that 10 minutes of browning time on the top of your bread. If you don't want your bread really brown, you don't have to do that part. You can just leave the lid on and it'll be a softer white and a nice like chewy, doughy bread. I think it looks really pretty, and I like to have that nice golden crisp on it, so. Now, to go with it, what's bread and jam without butter? So we're gonna do butter. It is 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. This is homemade butter. You can just do store-bought butter. You don't have to go over the top with it, but there's just something really tasty and yummy and extra special about having a nice little dish of just some fresh whipped butter. So you're going to want to use your whisk attachment for your KitchenAid. All it is 2 cups of heavy whipping cream and about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You wanna just put a little dash in there. And then you have to have your whisk attachment, that's important. If you do not have a KitchenAid mixer, you can use a hand mixer with the little like whipping blades or whatever. You'll be standing there having to do it for a while, but it does work. It's just the motion. So if you don't have that, no problem. That's an easy fix. You're just gonna wanna start this out slow, and then you're gonna let this whip for several minutes. This is about a 10 to 15 minute process. And that's my bread going, so we'll pull that out in just a second. All right, so this you're gonna wanna leave it like about a medium to high, and you're just gonna whip it basically for about like 10 minutes. It'll start out to get kind of frothy and liquidy, and then I'll show you the gradual stages of what it starts to do. At the end, you want it to be nice yellow chunks of butter, and you'll be able to tell easily what that looks like. All right, so this is gonna start turning into whipped cream in the first stage. When it does, you're gonna wanna turn it off and scrape all your sides down, because otherwise it won't get fully incorporated. So you may need to do that a time or two in between, but it will continue to thicken. So, whoopsies. So whenever you have it turning to whipped cream, the next stage will be that it'll start to get thicker and thicker, and then eventually it's gonna start to turn yellow, and it's going to start to get a lot of water around it. That's the excess milk coming out of it. And then you'll get your yellow clumps of butter. I'm gonna turn it on high here and keep letting it whip. All right, and now, whoop, when it starts to splash out, it's exactly where it needs to be. And this is what you want it to look like. All right, so then you just wanna get your whisk out here. And what you're gonna do then is just separate the solids from the liquid. And actually what this is buttermilk. This is where buttermilk comes from. And you can actually save the buttermilk if you want from this recipe. And you can use it in anything that calls for buttermilk. It is actually pretty tasty. Buttermilk pancakes. I use buttermilk in some salad dressings and things. So it's really easy. Just get these little, pieces of butter out. And whether you choose to reserve the buttermilk or not is totally up to you. But I always like to try to waste the least amount of food as possible that I can. All right, and then once this is patted dry, you can use a paper towel too, whatever. I'm just using a dish towel right now that's clean. You're going to just transfer it into a little dish like this, and then this is your fresh whipped yummy tasty butter. And again, this is really versatile. This is awesome because if you want to make this like a fresh herbed butter, you can put spices in it. You can make this be whatever you want. When it's a fresh herbed butter, it's so yummy. I like to do one too that is a honey cinnamon butter. I just put a little bit of honey in this recipe, sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon, and it's like a really yummy sweet butter that you can put on. And then we've got this. All right, to the side, you just press it in and it goes like that. And now that I've got my butter done, I am going to pull our fresh baked bread out of the oven. I can't wait to see what it looks like. Oh, it looks so good. Oh my goodness, it's so cute and so easy. Look at that. All right, we're gonna take the parchment out and then take it right off and put it on our cooling rack. There you go, and look how beautiful that looks. It was so simple, and it would look like, you took a lot of time on it, but it's so easy to do, and it's really delicious. And then see on the bottom there how it's nice and light? Because you had that parchment paper in your cornmeal, it didn't get real rock hard and dark on the bottom. So that is a really nice tip I love doing for my bread. All right, so we're gonna get this pot out of the way, and I'm gonna bring our jelly over. Our nice homemade jam. So that's been on for about 25 minutes or so. I'm gonna take this off so I can show you what it looks like taking the lid off. It's going to be real bubbly and reduced down. All right, and then it's gonna be reduced down, like I said, and I have just like a potato masher here. I like to kind of mush it together at the end. If you don't have this, you can also use a whisk to just kind of like use a mashing motion. It just kind of helps break up the rest of that fruit. Now, at this point in time, if you wanted to take this jam off the stove and put it in a jar and leave it this way, you absolutely can. It'll just be a little bit of a chunkier jelly. I like to put mine in a food processor because I like it to be really nice and blended and smooth. All right, so then what you're gonna do to test if this is done is you can put this on a spoon. And if you can kind of run your finger down the middle and it doesn't run back together and leaves a clear space, you'll be able to tell that it is set, and it will set up finishing in the refrigerator for you, and then it will get nice and like a gel. But because there's no pectin, it's not going to get thick unless it's cooked long enough and set. And voila, you have fresh homemade jam, super easy, no pectin, and guys, I'm telling you, this tastes so good. This tastes great. My kids love this. I have a jar here that I started filling. Just put it in a little jar. It's really pretty. I like to have mason jars on hand. And this exact recipe will fill just right up to the top, one 16-ounce jar for you, so it works out very well. If you do not have a mason jar, it doesn't matter. I just like to keep them in mason jars because I think they're really cute. Well, this is actually not a mason jar, it's a ball jar, but you know, you get the point. And especially if you're doing something like a homemade gift, these are so cute. You can just put a little ribbon around it and put it in a basket. I'm just gonna get this pan out of the way. So we've got our homemade butter. We've got our homemade jam. Oh, very quickly, I forgot to tell you, you do want to completely cool this at room temperature and then put it in the fridge. It will finish thickening and setting up in the fridge. You don't want to serve it hot. Tastes really good, but you still want to wait. And then we've got our fresh baked bread. So here in about a week, it is going to be Mother's Day. So I thought that this would be a really cute homemade gift for Mother's Day. Dads, you can do this with your kids if you want to make your wife feel like you put a lot of time and effort into something for her. You could serve this as like a little breakfast board, put some scrambled eggs and some bacon on the side with some fresh baked bread. If you're doing this for your adult mother and you're an adult child, whatever, this is still a really cute kind of a gift basket idea that you could put together if you wanted to. But what's better than fresh baked bread and fresh made homemade jam and whipped butter? Nothing. It's great. So all of these recipes are also pretty inexpensive and very easy. I know the food cost is going up a lot lately. These are very inexpensive ingredients to get. Grapes are a lot cheaper than strawberries. Like whatever you need to do to kind of edit it, you can do that, and I promise you, you will still love the outcome. It's really delicious. So until next week, keep it fun, keep it simple, and I will see you guys again next week.